No matter how well the first date goes, I never get my hopes up. It all goes downhill after she sees my micro penis.
What the hell is going on here?
Nothing, baby penis.
Yes, I did say small penis many times because that is, in fact, something that turns men on that have a small penis.
A cowboy hat means I'm ashamed of my small penis.
Why is it so small? Hi, it's so freaking small.
Bitch, get out.
Hi, welcome to Last Man on Earth. My name is Lex Durgan. As always, I'm flanked by Matt Ralston. Much like Jussie Smollett, Matt spent the better part of his last month explaining why he wrote a check to two muscle-bound, topless Nigerian brothers for $3,500. A clue would be the notation in the memo line that reads, Oreo cookie sandwich.
I thought everyone did that. You've never written a check to two Nigerian bodybuilders to
for physical
pretend to beat you up?
Physical training. I want to talk about Smollett later, but I don't know if you saw the latest update today is that his attorney, in trying to explain this farce as if it was a real thing, explained that perhaps the Nigerian brothers put on whiteface to pretend to be white.
Uh-huh.
That was why they're still trying to explain away why Jussie it's called the cops that it was two white guys, now knowing for sure that it was the Nigerian guys and how he could possibly have thought Nigerian guys were white guys. And so their explanation is that they probably donned whiteface. So,
okay.
Which, by the way, I don't think has ever been done before except like in a Wayans Brothers movie. where the black guy is trying to pretend to be white and fit into like the white high school so they can do the stupid black guy playing white guy comedy.
It would look really strange. It wouldn't really look like an Irish guy. It would look like some kind of tribal ceremony or something.
Yeah, it would look like these guys are really dark skinned too. They're not like light skinned black.
Yeah.
They're really dark skinned. So to actually appear to be white, they'd have to like white. Yeah,
I mean, if they went to like Industrial Light and Magic and got fitted for some serious award-winning makeup and prosthetics, then yeah. But like obviously, this is just getting more and more
like
ridiculous.
Eddie Murphy when he pretended that old SNL little movie when he pretended to be white.
Yeah, that was funny.
He walked into the bank like, "Oh, hello," and like, "Oh, please stop. Here's your money for your loan, Mr. White."
He was always pretending to he was the old Jewish guy in Coming to America, and I mean, I was pretty young when that came out, but I had no idea. And then, someone tells you, like, that's Eddie Murphy. And you're like, no way. How is that possible?
Well, millions of dollars of prosthetics and makeup and so forth that I'm assuming the Nigerian brothers didn't have.
No.
This week's show is sponsored by Stormy Daniels. No matter how many ways you can imagine a woman being fucked, you're not even scratching the surface with Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels, she's got holes you've never even heard of.
She's started doing the
comedy, right?
Well, she's started doing comedy, but she's also doing... When you click on a porn video and the annoying advertisement comes up before the porn video.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And she's like, hey, you guys know me. I've been in the news. And you're just like, oh, God. Like,
wow.
Like, please get off the, and you can click it after like 4 seconds or something.
So it's like her, Farrah Abraham or someone like that.
It's her with, yeah, it's that type of thing. And her tits are enormous, but strange looking. And it's not good.
She's very odd. I'm just assuming at this point that we're going to talk about Avenatti also later, but I'm assuming at this point she has about $3 to her name, and she has no prospects whatsoever, and she's going to be found in a trailer dumpster somewhere like in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
She's not that she doesn't deserve that, but I mean, it's like how fast someone has fallen from like a year ago when she seemed like she had revived herself into this worthwhile sort of person with career prospects, and I think she even out of the gate got a few like $50,000 gigs for at the major strip clubs.
Yeah,
it's all gone now.
She got a huge ovation when she did Bill Maher a few months ago. And
why? I don't even understand.
I don't know. She doesn't, and she's like her comment on Twitter. She said it 100 times that Trump's dick looks like a mushroom.
Yeah, it was funny the first time.
Well, anyone who's circumcised, Trump obviously being pretty waspy, guessing that he's circumcised. Anyone's dick looks like a mushroom. Every dick looks somewhat like a mushroom. Like, it's not really that funny.
I will concede that to point to you, Matt, as an expert in dick. But, I think she was mocking his size, I think. I think she was suggesting that he was, like, mushroom-sized.
Right.
Like, his length would indicate something in the shape of an actual mushroom as opposed to I don't know, what other vegetable, long-form vegetable you might think of.
The left, I wouldn't even say the left with her, but people that the left is anti-body shaming unless you're like a right-wing person. That's like their go-to thing is they'll start body shaming. It's weird.
They stopped the hair jokes and the fat jokes, stuff like that. I just think she was completely played, of course, and which is fair enough because she's just a whore. But it really is like a year ago she was on top of the world for what she was, and now I'm just guessing she's looking for recycling cans at the back of the Rouse.
That would make me happy. I'm sick of her, and I hope I never.
Well,
see her
what's
again.
the one thing we absolutely know about her for sure? That she had sex with Trump for money. That's like the only thing we actually know about her for real.
She had sex with Trump in an effort to be on The Celebrity Apprentice.
Yes,
I think,
and to make money, and it's just, so like that's just disgusting. Sorry, I mean Trump's already disgusting, but at least he became president, I guess. Do not forget to become patron of the show on patreon.com/Last Man on Earth. Thanks to all our new patrons. Get on the shit now before it disappears. If you wish to contact the show, hit us up on Twitter at Last Man Podcast or on Facebook, also Last Man Podcast. All right, on to the show. Matt, I want to talk about Jussie Smollett because I have been wrong, I think now officially 7 times as to what's happening in the case.
Yeah, this latest thing just really threw me for a loop, too.
I don't think anybody... I have to believe that Rahm Emanuel is faking his outrage because I don't honestly believe that Rahm Emanuel is not so well connected that he wouldn't know what was going on. The police chief maybe, but
then why is he... He must know whoever is pulling these strings.
That's what I'm saying.
So why is he... So you're saying he was in on it and now he's acting like he wasn't?
Or he voted against, but I think they all had a meeting and he voted against doing this, but they decided to go forward with it anyhow. It's not like he is like got to be one of the most connected guys in Chicago and the Democrat circles there and everything else. I mean, he's friends with everybody.
Yeah.
There's no way he wasn't informed about this or knew about this coming down the line. He must have. The police chief probably they kept out of the loop because he's actually a cop and they didn't want him bitching. But so originally when this thing came out, we all knew it was fake, like within, I don't know, an hour. I thought actually Rahm Emanuel would tell everyone just to shut the fuck up and make it go away. Because I didn't think they wanted to go through with the arrest and prosecution of Jussie Smollett on a fake hate crime. Because it just made everybody the city look bad, Smollett, all his powerful friends, everybody looked bad. The cops would have to investigate. But God bless them, they went through a fucking major investigation, found every single bit of evidence against him, proved that he was a liar, and indicted him on 16 counts, which seemed a little heavy on the indictment count.
Yeah,
I mean 16 felonies seemed a little heavy for something that I thought should have resulted in like heavy community service, perhaps, and a big fine.
Well, you know how cops operate. For example, if you were to flip off a cop, they would probably beat you to death. They're not supposed to do that. But, you know, they're a touchy bunch, and they retaliate pretty aggressively.
Well, I think once you had the black police commander being that outraged at Smollett, it gave license to everyone to say, like, okay, there's no politics on this one.
Yeah.
This is just, like you said, a fucker who fucked with us, and now we're going to fuck him back. Like, we don't have to worry about race or the fact that he's gay or anything like that. The police chief has given us license to, like, go after this minority, essentially, and just ream the crap out of him for what he did to us.
Right.
And they did, but it wasn't the cops who who gave him the 16 indictments. That was a grand jury, albeit it's easy to get indictments from a grand jury.
Yeah.
But that's the same system of the people that eventually let him go. But I thought he would admit to guilt, eventually get off with like cleaning some toilets in public parks in Chicago, which could have worked out well for him in other ways. And and a large fine, which I'm not big on jail. I think prison is a waste of time for people like Smollett. I mean, he's not violent in and of himself, other than punching himself in the face. You know, and still having to pay his bills for 2 years or a year while he sits in prison and becomes a martyr just seemed like a bad idea.
Yeah, I think I would have been really happy with a guilty plea.
Yes,
just get that on the books. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if he really needs to go to prison or anything. But
nah, like it was clean the fucking side of the freeway, like all those dudes.
Well, you know where he did his community service,
at
right?
the Rainbow Push,
Jesse Jackson's place, and so like I don't get how that whole process happened. I guess he was doing the community service the whole time. Well, I bet you he wasn't.
It was 2 days. It was 2 days. Let's not get carried away.
Oh, he had 2 days of community service,
and he did it before. He's the only first guy in history to ever do community service in advance of being asked to do community service. Like, hey guys, I did my, sometimes what like when actors get arrested, they'll do the rehab thing, and they'll like get a delay from the judge to do rehab, so when they come back to court, they can tell like the prosecutor and everybody else, look, he's already attended rehab.
Right.
But I've never heard of anyone doing advanced pre-community service.
Well, how would you know how much to do?
No, that's the thing. Or where it was approved to do, or, I mean, I don't think you get to decide. It's not like community, even like Lindsay Lohan, when she got arrested, had to do the coroner's office.
But now he's saying he's claiming he was innocent the whole time.
He's still claiming he's innocent.
But he still did the community service. So I think none of it makes sense. It's the most nonsensical. It's like the most 2019 story ever because none of it makes any sense. Everyone's lying.
Well, I think he had. So I think he obviously had pull. The fact that the Kim Fox, the state's attorney, said, which by the way, if it wasn't a famous case, I'd kind of believe her, where she said like, look, this is like a nonviolent felon. We got more important things to deal with. We don't typically like bring 16 felony charges against an idiot for pulling off a dumb stunt or even lying to the cops. We don't usually prosecute that kind of stuff. We usually give guys a fine and let them go or something. If it hadn't been such a big, huge case with the guy going on TV and claiming his innocence, I might have bought that. If it was just like a John Doe who did some idiotic thing at 2 a.m. in Chicago to get attention. Yeah. But it wasn't that. I mean, that's not what it was. So even if she decided to give him a zilch type of penalty, they had to get the admission of guilt.
Right. And and he does deserve some punishment. I mean, so when this whole thing was fake and he went down and was interviewed by the police, but he wasn't really cooperating. So they said, hey, we have these 2 suspects. And he would... Nigerian guys. He didn't know they were his buddies that he hired. So you don't think he would have thrown 2 random white guys under the bus?
Oh, hell yeah.
2 street guys. Like, hey, are these the guys? Yeah, absolutely. Put those guys in jail. You don't think he would have done that?
If this had happened if this had been in like Alabama or somewhere, literally a race riot could have started.
He didn't he was cooperating until he realized, that he was caught.
Yes.
But like the fact that he was cooperating under the premise of we found the 2 guys in the video, which were 2 homeless guys, basically, right?
No, the 2 guys in the video were the Nigerian brothers.
Oh, those were them.
Yeah, there was 3 people on the streets of Chicago that night. There was Jussie Smollett and 2 Nigerian brothers who also happened to coincidentally be his physical trainers on the show.
So when you come in and drop this, it's like, as you said, so now it's like they were doing whiteface, but I was thinking the Big Lebowski, like the whole point of anonymously assaulting someone. You don't assault someone who knows you.
No.
And then...
For political purposes.
No, because you don't want them to be able to identify you.
Right.
And if he knew them, I mean, I guess they were wearing masks.
No, they were wearing, according to him, they were just wearing MAGA hats.
I heard they were not. He never claimed that.
Oh,
they were just saying MAGA stuff.
They definitely bought. The most shocking thing to me about the story was that they did buy those ski masks with the holes in the face.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you never see anyone wearing while skiing. They're referred to as ski masks.
I don't think they should be sold. Certainly not in inner cities.
They're referred to as ski masks, but clearly you never see anyone with the holes just over the mouth.
It's like ski mask in quotes, yes. Like, water pipe or something.
Only used for robberies, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, really, I don't think they should be sold if they're not close to a ski slope.
But the amazing thing to me was that 2 black Nigerian muscle-bound brothers go into a hardware store in Chicago, buy those masks and rope and some other implements, and no one calls the cops. In LA, there would have been 17 people calling the police. Like, oh, you want some ski masks and some rope, large black guy? Sure. Here, like, there would have been someone pushing the buzzer. SWAT would have rolled in. They would have shot the guys even if they had some legitimate reason to buy the ski mask, which nobody ever does. It's the crazy part is that he's still professing his innocence. They mentioned suing. He might sue the Chicago police. I don't understand. Is he like? Do you think he's mentally ill, or is he just like received some really horrible crisis management advice from his team?
I think he might have got like not bad crisis management. Just keep denying everything, and not only that, but just profess your innocence and just now he's going so far as I feel like this is maybe his own doing. Like maybe he embellished a little bit, but. Like now he's talking about how he was set up and how it's,
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about he's really acting. He's putting himself out there as a civil rights martyr. And he mentioned like he swore on his mother's. He did some shit like didn't swear on his mother's grave, but something like that about how he would never do. He couldn't do this to the people he's fighting for the cause of. I mean, I assume everybody knows he's guilty, even the people who liked him before. I mean, literally, he could have just said, I'm sorry, and spent a year away. I mean, a Louis C.K. year away and come back. But now I think he's just ruined. I would imagine he's just ruined.
I think he would have been ruined. I think he is ruined regardless, but I don't know. Because, like, I shouldn't say half, but a few of the cast on, what's the name? Empire. Like, Gabby, I can never say her name. The fat girl.
I don't know. They're all fat.
Gabrielle Savigny. Gabrielle. Whatever. One of the major people on the cast.
Taraji P. Henson?
I don't fucking know. But they sent out a tweet like, yeah, he was framed.
Oh, yeah.
And, we knew this the whole time. This has some OJ, some hints of OJ to it in terms of, like, yeah, the Chicago PD, I'm not a fan. I'm sure that most black people that live in Chicago are not a fan.
Yeah, but having a black police chief come out and actually put his reputation on the line, saying this guy's guilty, and then also Rahm Emanuel, who obviously is a super progressive.
Well, both things can be true. Like, this isn't all that complicated. The Chicago PD can be a fucked up institution.
Yes, they are. I believe they are.
And
like most city cop organizations.
So if you believe that, and you could probably cite a lot of examples why. And so in this case, it's like, okay, so someone sort of on the Democratic side of things, of the Democratic Party side, the establishment in Chicago stepped in because this was drawing negative attention to, hate crimes and racism and homophobia, etc.
He's a friend of Kamala Harris, a close friend of Kamala Harris's.
Yeah, he attended her workshop on hate crimes or some shit.
She calls him her nephew. I don't know what that actually means, but she refers to him as her nephew.
So both things can be true.
Yeah.
The Chicago PD can be racist, and he could be guilty. Like, what is wrong with people that they can't?
Yeah, but
believe two things simultaneously?
Even in the OJ case, you had the Mark Furman, who was the racist cop who had found the evidence. There was at least a story you could build about two white racist cops in LAPD setting up OJ.
Yeah,
there's been not a single shred of evidence of that in the Smollett case. There's absolutely zero. I mean, even the Smollett team admitted the Nigerian brothers perpetrated the crime.
Right. His alibi is that he's guilty.
Yeah. His alibi is that his personal trainers, two guys from Nigeria, suddenly decided to get dressed up in whiteface and buy a noose and have a fake, a racist attack on him at 2 a.m, knowing that he was going to Subway sandwiches.
After he paid them each $3,500.
After he paid them each and had texted them before and after the assault occurred.
So that's the story.
Yeah.
So if you're on the jury, how are you feeling about that one?
That's what I'm saying. It's an open and shut case. It would have been. I understand why he didn't want to go to trial. Here's how I imagine it went down. There was a power broker meeting between Michelle Obama's assistant and this state's attorney, and I don't know if Emanuel was in there, and Jesse Jackson was in there, and who knows, someone from Kamala Harris's office. And they all said, look, here's how we're going to make this go away quietly. You're going to plead guilty, but we're going to get off with no penalties. And then Jussie Smollett's in there going fuck no, I'm innocent. I'm not doing that. I want this now, and started screaming like fucking crazy and demanding it happen now. And whatever juice he has made that happen, because this looks sloppy. This looked really sloppy.
Yeah.
For real political power brokers, they know how to finesse this. This was ugly. So I'm assuming he went batshit crazy. He and maybe Lee Daniels or somebody else went batshit crazy. I just demanded this be dropped right now, and because this looked like it was rushed and very poorly done, and I think someone else is gonna end up going to jail for this.
Well, the Chicago PD is talking about they're trying to get federal. I mean, it's pretty much over at this point, I think. But.
Well, they have the mail charges because if he mailed himself the hate letter with the crushed up aspirin. But honestly, at this point, I'd rather him just be this fucking joke for the rest of his life.
I think he is going to be. So he came to L.A. I just brushed up on TMZ since I was coming in here because he's nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Is he really?
For the NAACP Awards.
Oh, I see.
Which
Gotcha.
must be taking place this weekend. So does he get booed? Because if I was there, I would be booing him in perpetuity. But
I've seen some pretty prominent black celebrities saying he needs to go away.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to denounce him, but I think you know, like Charles Barkley will. But like, you know, the rank and file Hollywood sort of black elite are just going to want him to go away. They're not. They know what's going on.
I mean, they were cool with Michael Jackson. He's kind of harmless comparatively.
Well, he was just fucking little white boys. I wanted to run by one of the Michael Jackson defenders this week. Why they said Michael Jackson just loved kids and he would invite them over to give them great experiences for their young lives. Mm-hmm. Why he never invited girls over? Like why he felt girls didn't deserve that?
That's a good question.
Somehow he went through 200 kids and they just randomly are all we're all boys.
Along those lines, I would agree with you. And so here's my sort of very quick take on the whole thing. No one tries to sleep with people that they're not trying to fuck.
Oh yes.
You don't ever voluntarily sleep in the same bed with any person that you don't plan on fucking.
And that includes Abraham Lincoln and his Secret Service guard, who we learned later on were actually stroking each other in the evenings. So
what do you mean we learned later?
Well, I mean, there was always like it was always, the Lincoln thing was always like, so he slept in like the White House with a dude in his bed.
Yeah.
And it was always like, oh, you don't understand. In the 1860s, it was very common, which I think it was for men to share beds, because it wasn't like everyone had their own rooms back then, and they couldn't phone like 1-800-mattress to get mattresses delivered.
Well, that's the thing. It was common in certain scenarios, but when there are extra beds available.
Yes, but in the White House, apparently there were more than one bed. So,
yeah.
And also, by the way, it was to stay warm, because it was fucking cold in those places. They had fireplaces, but they didn't have central heating. Nowadays, it would be, obviously, yes. And the Neverland Ranch, I assume Michael wasn't clinging to the children for heat.
No, and I'm sure they had extra rooms available. I mean, I have no problem sharing a bed with friends I grew up with, because, like you said, there weren't always beds available. But you can fucking bet that if there are two people and there's two beds and one guy's suggesting sleeping in the same bed,
yeah,
we're not even staying in the same room at that point.
No, especially if one guy's 40 and one kid's 9, and the 40-year-old has a nose that's falling off his face, is offering wine to the kid. Matt, I want to talk about Mama June. You're a big Honey Boo Boo fan. I think you watch and rewatch all those episodes.
I think Head should roll at TLC for ever, allowing that filth to be on TV.
Yeah, I kind of into the freak show thing. First of all, those people get paid a lot of money. I mean, relatively speaking, yes, their lives are completely exploited and they're mocked endlessly, and they all end up dead from drugs. But by the same token, they live pretty well for the few years their series are going. It's a real gladiator. It's a real gladiator type experience, I think, where you get to be rich and famous for 2 or 3 years, and then you die, and they pull people from the dregs. I mean, I guess you could kind of look at it like the CTE of football, which is they're taking poor kids, putting them in a violent sport, using them for a few years for entertainment, and then they don't care what happens to them afterwards.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same with these fat, disgusting rednecks that they put on TV. I will not talk about Honey Boo Boo, because I can't stand to talk about children that are exploited like that.
That's the thing I don't like. I mean, Mama June, do whatever you want, but this was a culture where I believe it was Honey Bear, her boyfriend, or maybe it was her other boyfriend. I don't know. The fact that she
sexually assaulted the child.
Was molesting the daughter.
Yes.
And
casually glanced over on the show.
Right. This is all on TV. Haha, these people are kind of backwoods.
Yeah,
it's actually not funny. We're talking about the guy that was raping kids.
Yeah, the kid who's pre-diabetic and will probably not live to see 20. I don't like the exploitation of kids in any manner. In fact, I don't know if you saw this story this week. A woman got arrested remind me of this, in Arizona. She had adopted 7 adorable little kids, and she was beating them basically and abusing them and doing all sorts of weird torture shit to them to get them to perform on her YouTube channel. And she had a YouTube channel featuring the 7 kids doing crazy kid antics.
Yeah.
She had 800,000 subscribers, and she was making a boatload of money, and basically had these kids locked in closets and was tasing them. These are 5-year-olds. She was tasing to get them to perform when they didn't want to perform on camera for the YouTube channel. I was like, who the fuck is watching this? She literally was just fucking, concentration camping these kids into performing on this fantastic kid adventure, whatever the hell it was. Yeah. And close to 1 million subscribers.
Don't they do like inspect your house when you adopt the 5th kid? And one of them's like, "Help me!"
It was fucking horrible. And I always think is like, you should not. There's got to be a law that you cannot put like kids on screen anywhere for money. There just has to be a rule about that. I mean, no Hollywood. I mean, look at it. Literally, the only place you can have child labor, the only industry is entertainment.
Yeah,
you couldn't put a Honey Boo Boo in a job anywhere else without everyone getting arrested. She couldn't work at fucking Macy's at the fucking shoe counter.
Yeah,
but she can fucking be on TV and have her life destroyed, and these kids can be on YouTube channels when they're 4 or 5 with no representation whatsoever. And then of course they're all being abused or molested. But so here's a Mama June story. So I believe she's fat again. I don't know exactly what happened. There was that show she was on last year called like, what was it, Newly Hot or Freshly Hot or Hot?
She was still fat.
She was She had lost a lot. She clearly they stapled her stomach and she lost a lot of weight. And they spent an inordinate amount of time on her makeup trying to make her look not disgusting.
Do you think it had something to do with the fact that she smokes crack? I think maybe she was on the crack diet.
I think she was probably not at 14, probably not a horrible looking person. And then the drugs and the booze and the fat and everything else over the years made her look just like fucking a troll, right? So, she probably wasn't I'm sure she wasn't an attractive young teenager or whatever, but at least she was probably not hideous. Then she became this hideous troll. Then she had the TV show. Then she lost the TV show, and then they tried to do this thing where they made her lose a lot of weight, put a lot of makeup on her, and try to make her look like a swan story where she had come back to be attractive again.
Oh, it was called From Not to Hot.
Yes.
I just remembered.
Thank you, man. I knew you would know.
Which hot, it's like, what the?
I mean, if you did the side-by-side comparison photos, it definitely benefited her because she was so disgusting that when she got less disgusting, she looked better. Clearly not hot. But at least she looked less disgusting.
I just have certain standards for hotness.
Yes.
And she didn't quite make the cut.
So she's got a new boyfriend, I guess, who got pulled out of the home because he was getting drunk and beating her on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a funny show on TLC.
It really is. And but she wants him back. The court has put him on a restraining order, of course, because he was beating the crap out of her. But she is now officially has announced she's going blind. By the way, how old is she? Like 35, 38?
Does everyone that gets put on trial go blind now? Are they?
Well, Cosby at least was like 80.
In the neutral loaf that is affecting.
It's a little odder, like at 37 or 38, to be going blind. But I guess it's probably related to diabetes or something like that. So she's losing her eyesight, and now she wants the court to allow her abusive boyfriend back in her home, because he takes really good care of her outside of the occasional beatings. And at first you're thinking everyone's thinking obviously well, that seems like a really, really bad idea because he's just going to beat the crap out of her again. But me as a libertarian is thinking, well, I don't know. So that's baked in, right? Who else is going to take care of this woman? Maybe he's good at baking cookies or find the remote for her under the cushion. Right. The little things in a relationship that are really important. And she doesn't mind that he beats her, that he gets loaded and beats her every now and then, and she's willing to put up with it. Shouldn't she be allowed to sort of say I choose the abusive boyfriend?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a law against. Is there against?
Well, the police file a restraining order in this case, as they do customarily when somebody is domestically abusing somebody. You as a victim can get a restraining order, but after the court intervenes, they also will put in a restraining order just to prevent that person from going to your house again, because if you've seen episodes of Cops in the past, you know that every incident is related to someone violating a restraining order and going back to beat up their old girlfriend or boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, she's going to be getting beat up by some guy, regardless of if it's this guy or some other guy. I mean, maybe the next guy could be worse.
This guy has to have maybe sex with her and feed her and do some other weird shit. So I'm thinking the trade-off of the occasional beating. Who else is she?
Was she ordered to get any kind of counseling that might stop her from exclusively dating people that beat her up and molest her kids?
I don't. You mean to stop her or to encourage her? I believe TLC is encouraging her.
Yeah.
They literally, when they do the casting for these shows, they literally find mentally ill people to cast, knowing that they will make very poor decisions, which then create drama, which then create higher ratings.
Yeah, I don't like that. I just think that I'll put you up there with, defending child molesters. If you're producing these shows, I think you have some moral culpability on this whole thing. I mean, you're encouraging it. You're giving them money so they have more money for drugs and booze.
You're not stopping any of that from happening.
You're encouraging it to happen more, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you're giving an idiot redneck, $1 million to play around with. You share some responsibility when they buy a gun and shoot up a mall or just take out their whole family with drugs or whatever they might do. But they're going to do something. They're not going to invest it and fucking buy a house with it.
Nope. There have been some lawsuits against these Bravo and other places, but they've never really gone very far. I don't know if they've settled them. None of them have ever been adjudicated to show culpability of the actual production team, because they'll always say, we're just casting, it's hands off. What they do is, we don't tell them to do the stuff, obviously. If they want to get drunk and beat each other up, we just film it. So we don't tell them to get drunk and beat each other up.
And I put Dr. Phil in that boat, too. You have your field producers go out there and find super fucked up people and film them doing weird shit. And then you bring them in and you're kind of like, hey, why don't you stop smoking crack?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, you're totally right. And you're like, yeah, yeah, read a book. Like, he doesn't say anything.
No.
He's simply just an empty suit that interviews them in a solemn way, and then they go back to smoking crack.
It's like, we have a secret video of you in the green room, in the crack we supplied you, in the green room, using the crack we left on the table for you with the pipes.
Yeah,
that was a test. It was a test.
Weren't they doing that? They were, like, putting booze in the green room?
Oh, I believe that. To get them loaded before they come on stage.
Yeah.
I believe that too. Well, what do you think? Do you think, like, I remember this was an old case. This was back in Texas. And it used to be like they couldn't compel a woman to testify against her husband or boyfriend if he beat her. Like, it was Warren Moon, the old quarterback Warren Moon, had beat his wife, allegedly beat his wife, and she refused, and she was beat up pretty bad, and she refused to file charges against him. And that was the old days when, like, if a woman just said, I don't care, I'm not going to file charges, they had to drop it. And then they had this compulsion, they changed the law to this compulsory thing where, like, you also could be arrested if you didn't file the charges, essentially. And I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of like, I understand that women may not be in the right mind when they're getting beaten by their significant others.
Yeah.
But in this, like, Mama June case, I'm thinking, like, she's like, her options are very limited. And if she's thinking, like, okay, the guy who occasionally beats me is also going to make my life better, why shouldn't she be allowed to as long as there's got to be a rule that you can't call the cops. There has to be a rule after that the coroner, when you're dead, fine. But, like, in betwixt, like, for every single fight, every time he beats you up, you can't call the cops anymore.
I mean, you could just move to Mexico or something, couldn't you?
She's not moving anywhere. I mean, if you tell the court, I want the restraining order waived, I want this man living in my house, and if he beats me, so be it. Okay, but then you're not allowed to call 911 like every drunk Saturday night, saying that your boyfriend's beating on you again. Or cops get to laugh at you. They get to laugh at you over the phone when you do. They can say, Mama June, you made your bed, you lie in it. And then they hang up. Something like that.
Maybe they attach some kind of puzzle to the 911, so if you're drunk, that's just on you. Like, you got to solve the Rubik's Cube and then call 911.
What do you think, like, the percentage of, like, 911 calls on weekends are just, like, domestic abuse situations? It's got to be, like, an inordinate number of just, like, so-and-so's beating me, and my boyfriend's this, and my girl. I mean, I always hear the calls on TMZ and other places. That's all it is.
Well, I had this girlfriend that she would do this very routinely. She would start some kind of argument, or at least we would get into an argument. Usually drinking was involved. And then she would stand in front. So I'd be like, all right, I'm just getting out of this situation. I'm going to go walk down the street, maybe have a beer, maybe just cool off, walk around the block. Anyway, I'm just leaving this apartment, right? And she would stand in front of the door. And I'm like, all right, well, you have two options here. You can move, or I'll have to move you. But that was a bluff, because I knew better than that.
Yes, no, you can't put your hands on a woman. You'll be in big trouble.
Yeah, even when she's blocking you from exiting. So then, obviously, the argument escalates, and one time the cops actually came, and that really pissed me off, and I had to break up with her. Yeah, I think it's a pretty... Someone called the cops. If they hear people yelling at each other, they call the cops.
They do now. I don't know if that was an old... That feels like it's not an old days thing. I feel like in the old days, like, husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends were allowed to scream at each other like crazy. And nobody ever called the cops. Nobody ever called the cops.
I wouldn't call the cops. I would have to hear something along the lines of "Stop punching me," and then I would call the cops.
Is that a gun?
Yeah. I'm not just calling over volume.
Over volume? No, I don't like that either. Matt, I want to move on to Cardi B. We're going from one of your super fan of Mama June to Cardi B. I have to actually I've looked at her background story 5 times now because I've always disbelieve it. Mm-hmm. So she's one of those people where I can't believe that how famous she is based on her background. And then I remind myself every couple months I'll go back and look at her Wikipedia page just to remind myself that she literally appeared out of nowhere. I mean, she was a stripper. And then she was on the VH1 Love and Hip Hop show, whatever the hell that was, which I think is just a show designed to, showcase black women with big tits that are sort of involved in hip hop.
Right.
As far as I can tell. If you're sort of involved in hip hop, you're dating a rapper, you're trying to record an album, and you have big tits, and you have a wicked mouth, you're on the show.
So she did, so she was on that show. Then suddenly she was on Saturday Night Live.
Well, she did. She started recording, and then she left. She was considered I don't know what season it was of the show, but she was considered every year there's the one breakout star. Of every reality show has the one breakout star. Right. So she was a breakout star, which then got her a recording contract of some kind to actually start recording music because she was now famous from the show, relatively speaking, within that demographic. And so then she recorded the music, and then the music started taking off. And like you said, she did SNL and other things like that, where she became very high profile. As far as I can tell, she can't speak, and she does have enormous breasts, and she's sort of an attractive, mixed Bronx type woman who I can see is relatable to a lot of people. She's extremely sassy.
I can't imagine what she would look like without the makeup. If she would look better or worse, but that sort of clown look doesn't really help anyone.
It's like the Nicki Minaj. She's to me, I think she is Nicki Minaj. Although I think, I wouldn't say Nicki Minaj had more musical talent. I don't know. It's hard to say. Whenever I hear these songs, they're so produced, so heavily produced.
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's a robot or if it's actually a person doing it. I don't think it matters. So she puts on a stage show. She's got the body.
She makes a lot of noises. She does a lot of almost crackhead style Tourette's type of outbursts.
She does not enunciate, so you can't actually understand what she's saying. So it's more of and literally she's I don't know if you're old enough to remember when Patrick Ewing used to speak in his younger days.
Yeah,
he just could not speak very well. So he was very hard to understand until he became older. And God bless Patrick Ewing, he learned how to speak and became the head of the union for the players' union. But in his Georgetown basketball days, half the kids on this team could not literally speak the English language. They spoke Ebonics, but they could not speak the English language, and so where you could understand them. And so she's sort of like that. She does make the little squeaks and peeps and sort of half words and words. And they call them words that she's made up. And no, I think she's actually trying to say other words, and they just come out wrong. And they go, "Oh, she made up grr."
I think her whole thing is, it's absurd. Her whole thing, and burp.
Yeah, now it's a meme on social media because she just couldn't say the actual word.
I mean, she's had this ongoing, it's always on TMZ and these crappy shows about her and Offset, and
she calls out other rappers.
They had a baby, and he cheated on her, and they get back together, and I'm so I started thinking this seems heavily contrived. What are the odds they're on the same record label, her and Offset?
Right.
I went ahead and looked that up, and it turns out they are.
Of course.
So they're just engaging. He's probably gay. It's probably someone else's baby, and they're just playing out this thing.
Well, she also started calling out Trump and Trump officials and stuff like that, and again, there's nothing bold about that. But if you're big on Instagram or Twitter, it gets you lots of play.
Right.
I didn't quite understand, but let's get to Cardi B's background because she was a girl in the Bronx. She worked at a grocery store. She got fired. I'm going to assume for not showing up and or stealing and or just being obnoxious to her boss. And the boss basically said you should be a stripper because she probably was dumb and she might be dumb, but she had big tits and she had trouble written all over her. And so she went to become a stripper. And then later on, apparently, we learned from a video, an unearthed video. I like unearthed videos, unearthed Instagram posts or Twitter posts.
Mm-hmm.
Like unearthed sounds like you've actually done like some Indiana Jones archaeological dig. Like you have to fly to Cairo and spend like a year digging, as opposed to just doing a search for old Instagram, Twitter posts on sort of buzzwords.
Right.
But in the video, she talks about the fact this is her first person admitting this, that when she was a stripper, she would take men, Johns essentially, up to a hotel room for sex, wherein she would drug them and rob them.
She left out the part that sometimes she just fucked them for money, I'm assuming.
Yes, I would assume so. I would assume that was after.
So
that was before she stole their money.
She would drug them.
I was assuming she Mickey'd their drinks
and rob them.
And then when they passed out, she would take their shit and leave.
And this was just basic survival. It was either that or, I mean, God forbid, apply to a different grocery store. You really find yourself with only one option sometimes.
Yes.
To procure a bunch of date rape drugs.
Yes.
And then drug people against their will. And then rob them, which is a felony on multiple levels.
Well, here's the thing, too. So she's not, unlike some of these, like, Kavanaugh things, which, like, he's 52, and, like, when you were 16, like, in 1982, did you, like, okay. I mean, even if you did, like, date rape a girl in 1982, I think most people felt like, they were both drunk, they had sex, whatever. It was 36 years ago. She's only 26 now, so this is like maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, there's plenty of guys on the streets of New York that might recognize her from her stripper days.
Yeah, this is not like some youthful indiscretion like way back when. This is like 2 jobs ago for her when she was drugging and robbing guys. And then she pulled this like survivor. This is how girls survived on this whatever. I'm like, well, no, that's not how girls survive, because most girls, obviously a lot of strippers are into some bad shit. Clearly, within the subcategory of strippers, there are a lot of prostitutes and people ripping off people and and drugs and all sorts of stuff. But even within the stripper community, you'd have to think not every stripper is drugging and robbing Johns.
No.
So it's like even, and then there's also no indication of why just stripping, which I assume she made some decent money from, why she needed the extra, like how the extra money, like robbing a guy's watch, became survival mode. Like what was she not getting in her stripping pay? Like, let's say she was making $20,000 a year or $25,000 a year low end on stripping. Why did she need the watch for? The guy's credit cards or this? Like what kind of survival was she performing for herself?
Yeah, and the fact that she feels comfortable about sort of coming out with this narrative, I wouldn't say she's doing it like in a female empowerment type of way.
No, she said she wasn't proud of it. She did say she wasn't proud of it.
Yeah, but obviously if a dude, it's not that much different than, well, let's just say the exact same circumstances. I was a sort of male sex
escort
worker, and I would drug men and women and steal all their shit. It's like, okay, well, you're like a really bad person.
Yeah, although to me that feels like every male escort probably. But yeah.
Well, there's no equivalent to the female escort. So I'm trying to think of a guy that would be, but I'm a movie producer. I get women up in my hotel room.
Yes.
I drug them. I steal their purse. I was just doing what I had to do at the time. I mean, I would think there would be a little bit, people would be speaking out against you a little bit more if that were the case.
It was odd. I'm assuming she made more as a stripper than she did as a grocery store clerk, as a teenage grocery store clerk. So, like, if she had just remained a grocery store clerk and then was drugging and robbing guys, I think people would have thought, like, oh, God, that's horrible. Why is the bagging girl, like, committing violent felonies against our customers? But because she's a stripper, I think people kind of go, like, oh, that goes with the whole milieu of stripping, that this is just a seedy business and this is what you do to survive.
Yeah.
Like, there hasn't been a lot of thought into, like, just this free pass she's getting. And I don't even care if they go back and prosecute her, but I think there needs to be some investigation.
I don't know if I believe her. I mean, I think if she was doing this all the time, someone would have bit the bullet and charged her with something. You know what strip club she works at.
But I don't think John's like, I don't know, John's like, I think when they get robbed, the reason you can rob John's is they don't want to go to the police, right?
For me, it would depend on what she took. I mean, if she just took the cash out of my wallet.
What are you like? Did you taking the weekly store receipts up to you with the prostitute to the hotel room? Like, I'm assuming you put like $80 in your pocket. And
if I was missing a watch, I'd have something to say about it.
You're like, oh, I got a date with this hooker. I think I'm going to bring my nice watch, my bar mitzvah watch, with me to wear something nice. Yes, I think
guys are stupid.
Guys are stupid. I think Johns get ripped off all the time. And I assume they just never go to the cops because if they lost a couple $100, they don't want to fucking go. Oh yeah, I was hiring a prostitute, and you see what happened here. Let's go after.
Do you
her.
believe this story, or do you think she's just trying to sound super street?
I do. I think she probably didn't do it all the time. I don't think anyone could do this all the time. As if this was her, because there are other like. There's that lady who got arrested in Miami. You see in the club areas, there's always like these ladies getting arrested for like really ripping off rich dudes. Like they'll work the high end clubs in Miami. And they get the guys back. There was a woman who had taken like several guys off for north of $50,000 each that she had hooked up with at clubs, and they had very nice either cars or watches or jewelry, high end stuff. They were targeting these guys, and the chick would get them back to the hotel room to have sex, and then they drug them and take their stuff. But that was like a high end operation.
Right.
This feels like you're just grabbing a strip club John and like stealing $20 from him.
Well, how do you think this story would play out, like on Twitter with people chiming in? Let's say.
Well, someone did the comparison of different crime, but like Kevin Hart, like how Kevin Hart got dragged, for his allegedly homophobic comments, and that there's clearly a gender double standard here.
Well, let's say we kind of flipped it a couple ways. So let's say Matthew McConaughey tells this story, and he's like, he's giving some truth serum, and he goes, "Well, I went up with this prostitute that I was planning to pay for consensual sex. She then drugged me. I woke up with a banana in my ass. When I woke up, she was still in the room stealing my shit, so I beat the shit out of her."
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I don't know. I just feel like, all right, well, justice was served.
That's how you would feel. He would never share that story.
It's a pretty ridiculous story, but I'm just
the
saying,
banana
like,
part for sure.
Whose side are you on? I mean, like, what?
Well, Cosby, I mean, so
she's admitting that she, like, took advantage of people and committed crime. Everyone talks about violence against sex workers. It's like, yes, sometimes maybe justified, actually.
Well, they're clearly, I mean, this is a seedy business, and they're clearly doing bad shit. What I don't understand is that she said, like, she was basically praising the hip hop culture where no one should ever be ashamed of their past. I'm like, well, I don't know, like maybe if you were the victim in the like if you had been raped, we'd be like, oh God, like you grew up molested, or you had to strip to make, what's her name, Amber Rose started stripping at 15 because she literally came from a broken family where there's no money. You go, okay, we don't like her now, but at 15 or 16, there's no food on the table, and you're a fucking broken family. And some guy offers you money to strip, you're gonna strip. But that's different. That makes you're the victim in that story.
I rarely buy the it's just getting by thing with the stripping and hooking. I think that it pays more than any other job you could get.
Yes.
But you could, there's cocktailing, there's all kinds of stuff. The only woman that I knew that so there's this place in Seattle they closed down. It's called the Lusty Lady. It was a peep show. And chicks would dance around and they're naked. And the only
what the hell's a peep show? I'm watching the Deuce on HBO. Like, it's still hard for me to imagine guys went and then like a little window popped open for quarters.
I went in twice just for the experience.
I just don't. I guess in the internet generation, for sure, it's idiotic at this point.
It was interesting, and she was a huge feminist lesbian.
Yeah.
And she claimed that she had to dance naked there just to kind of make ends meet. She was fucking nuts. She's from a wealthy family.
Right.
This is just something that psycho women get into. They get some kind of power out of it. It helps them with their own issues. Perhaps there's abuse in their
well, it's obviously a way to make. I mean, there was that case of those girls at Brown University, upscale girls who were stripping at school because they were making thousands of dollars. So there's not a lot of jobs at 18 where you can make a lot of money. And if you're at a decent club, you're not going to get touched.
But don't act like you had to do it.
No.
You wanted to make more money.
Yes.
It's not the only way you could survive.
No.
You can make decent money at Chili's.
You could. And if you're a reasonably attractive woman with big breasts, I assume there's other options for you in terms of employment. Or getting
hostessing, promotional work.
Yeah. Shot girl, tequila ambassador.
Yeah.
Or just doing, say, Gurr and Burp on records and selling millions of albums. Matt, I want to ask you about Robert Kraft. We got an email from Larry, and I think you and I basically agree on the Robert Kraft prostitution situation. Going to another prostitute story. At least, by the way, he did not get robbed and drugged and robbed. You will not get drugged and robbed at a rub and tug in the strip mall.
Would you rather be drugged and robbed or video recorded by a bunch of bored cops, which the story of why they're doing this doesn't make a whole lot of sense?
Oh, if I had advanced knowledge, I would go for the drugged and... Well, the idea of like a 19-year-old stripper deciding how much drugs I need, it scares the hell out of me a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, that seems extreme. That seems like you're not going to die from the police from the vice sting, whereas the drugging in the hotel room seems like something I would just die. Then my cousin who arranges... the scenes before cops arrive when guys die in motel rooms would have to come and make it look like I was at a convention or something like that. But so Robert Kraft is pleading not guilty into his solicitation of sex, and he wants his day in court. And Larry writes, this is a good thing for justice, right? And I'm going to say yes. I think this is great that he's actually, I mean, idiotically, perhaps as a practical matter, but theoretically is fighting the actual conviction, is fighting the actual arrest for solicitation of prostitution.
Yeah, and I think he probably has the kind of lawyers that will get it dismissed. I'm sure that these cops fucked up a whole lot of stuff with what they did, and still unclear why they were videotaping people getting hand jobs. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. If they had these human traffickers, they're like, okay, we just have to, hear me out, Larry. We're just going to have to record some guys getting sucked off. It's like are you sure you're not a pervert and this is completely unnecessary?
Look at senior citizens are coming in to get their old dicks, pretty dicks stroked. We need like 48 hours to watch. Raise your hand if you want to spend the weekend watching this on videotape.
But they're being beaten and raped every night when they return back to the hovel. Well, yes. Whatever.
It seems like more like a customs issue than it does a vice issue. But I'm glad that he is, because I think that this is the whole thing. The burden of him of being involved, enabling a sex trafficking ring, is ridiculous. Of any John is ridiculous, unless the John's saying like, "Hey, you got any 12-year-olds from Taiwan or Bangladesh? I'll pay you extra money for that." Going into the massage parlor and asking for a happy ending cannot be equated to actively supporting international sex trafficking.
If you go to a Vietnamese restaurant
yes, right.
and your server is undocumented, how is that your fault whatsoever?
Well, the server is probably not getting sodomized for $20 a pop, but you're right. You're contributing to a different type of delinquency in international trade. Or if you're just buying, like, I don't know, Victoria's Secret underwear made in slave labor camps in Southeast Asia, you're contributing to girls who are being forced to stitch for 14 hours a day and have to pee in their pants because they're not allowed breaks. So there's all sorts of sort of second or third degree indirectly related things, sins that you're supporting when you buy pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is sex, and it's an old dude getting a hand job. So I can see how it's grosser than, say, buying almonds and having to worry about how the almond farmers almond pickers are being treated.
Yeah.
But it's not technically any different. And this, if you are a civil libertarian and you think women should have the right to abortion and gung-ho guys should have guns, then why can't a dude get a hand job? I mean, why does he not have a constitutional right to a fucking hand job?
Yeah, and it's a hand job. So she's already touching all around your dick and your she's touching all your body parts, but she just can't touch that one part. Like, even if your argument is like, well, it spreads diseases. Well, now with a hand job, there's no disease clean that can be like, it just seems like a logical extension of a massage. I mean, if he's like boning him in the ass, then maybe I could see like how that would be a slightly different argument, because
that should be in a different part of town at least.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Florida, you got to watch how
there's got to be more viruses being spread behind any given West Hollywood bar in the evening than there is at these rub and tugs. Yeah,
I think they're actually pretty safe. So in terms of like condom use and stuff.
I mean, Walmart is horrible to their employees. 20 million people a week shop at Walmart. I mean, we don't and there are the few people that will boycott it or don't go to Target because the owner gave money to anti-gay rights or whatever it is. But generally, 99.9% of people don't feel responsible from the store they're shopping at in terms of how they treat their employees or where they source their products.
No. And what are you supposed to do? How would you even get the information to clear yourself in the first place of associating with undocumented immigrants? Like,
well, you could. If it was legalized, you could, because then they would have to get a certificate from the county, and the county would actually come and inspect, like they do restaurants, and say, okay, there's no underage, illegally undocumented people working here. So actually, if you stop the vice stings and actually made it legal, and just like it did with weed, and force them to get inspected by a county inspector, who they're going to pay off anyhow, for what, not much difference. But at least they'd have an A grade on their window, and you could say, like, okay, no Chinlo from Bangladesh at 14 is not working here. They're all 18, and they're all documented.
It's a good point, but it still comes back to this bored cop thing of them wanting to stage and record sex. Like, I don't think, and I don't know, but let me know if they're recording across town, the young girls working in the offshore, garment factories. Are they taping the girls stitching with their fingers and watching that for evidence? I seriously doubt it. I think they're only watching the fucking that they have set up to watch. It's preposterous. They're obsessed with sex. This is perverse.
One thing I do love about the show The Deuce, which I'm pushing now, is the fact that it's in the 70s at Times Square, and every single cop is on the take, and either one or both. Either they're on the take, or they just get the free sex services, or they just want to watch the hot chicks having sex. So like every single cop, they're all 30-something-year-old guys, are basically corrupted by the sex industry.
Yeah.
Even the vice cops are all taking money. And this is loosely based on true facts. So, like, the vice cops are the most corrupt, the most corrupt people in the entire force, because they're literally charged with criminalizing sin.
Yeah,
and they become the biggest, just like the narc cops become the biggest narcotic dealers.
Let me tell you what won't work for any potential police chiefs paying attention. You get some huge dork of a guy, and then give him free reign to kind of walk around the city without being monitored and investigate like sex and drugs.
Yes.
We know where this goes.
Yes, of course. Unless Serpico was so unique in New York that they made a book and movie. They made a book and movie about the one guy not on the take. And what did the other cops do when they found out he was the one clean cop? They tried to kill him. They literally tried to kill him. I'm good for Robert. I'm glad a rich guy of means who's generally well liked in the community is actually putting himself on there to take on this idiotic prosecution. Because I think, in the very least, it will get the cops to start changing the abusive ways they have this. Now, having said that, I would not want to rub and tug necessarily close to my house.
Yeah.
I don't even I don't want an Asian massage parlor like where my kids might be walking from the bus stop. So a zoning thing might be in order.
There's dozens of them within a few blocks of my house.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they cause crime.
It's not that they cause.
I'd rather have that than like a huge gay bar or something.
Yeah, or like a 7-Eleven where there's always crime.
Even a dispensary, I think, could be worse than a rub and tug place.
Yeah, I just don't want. The idea of like Robert Kraft going in there to get the rocks off, as the kids are walking, kind of bothers me a little bit. So just put it like in semi more industrial area. Doesn't have to be in a factory base, but it's just somewhere where you put where you zone Home Depot. Put it next to the Home Depots where kids don't.
Well, then everyone's going to know what you're going there for. There is still some veil of you might just be getting a massage.
Yeah, right. There is at a place with the letters, the Thai letters out front.
Dude, I didn't know. I swear to God, I did a cannonball into a shallow pool, hurt my back accidentally, and so I asked my friend where to get a massage. And he thought I meant, where do I go to get a blowjob? And I went to this massage place and realized what was happening. And I said, well, as long as I'm here, I may as well.
Help, stop. It was an Asian place, I assume, right?
They're usually mostly Asian. This was a Latin chick, though.
If you go to a massage parlor with a random generic name in a strip mall, I would go with 99.9% chance they offer sexual services on top of the regular services.
Well, I'll tell you because
how else would you keep that business open?
I think some guys might just want massages. I don't know.
But they charge $40 for massage. It's always some coupon code and it's really cheap. Obviously they're not paying the girls there very much, but still you can't keep a business open.
I think they will charge you, and if you look weird or suspicious, they won't offer you extra stuff. Because every time you go in, they say, this was told to me by someone else. They say, have you been here before? And you go, yes. And that's pretty much are you a cop? no thing. But I don't know because I don't look like a cop. Maybe it's hard for like military guys that look like cops to get hand jobs in massage parlors.
You think they're that savvy? Like the owners actually like profiling people when they walk through the door?
There's just some guys that look a lot like cops. Usually kind of stiff, awkward guys.
You know what I discovered? You're right. The superficial profiling is really important. I learned this when I went to my one of my kids' school track and field events. So apparently, like I didn't know this, but like no adults are allowed on the actual track and field during the event. You have to sit up in the stands where you can't see anything. Have you been to like a track and field event? You can't tell what the hell's going on
right.
when you're in the stands because there's like 85 events taking place. On the field portion, there's all the fucking whatever, the javelin and shot put and all the other shit. And I walked right onto the field and stood like 5 feet from my kid to watch like close up when he's performing, and nobody stopped me. And it was only then later on I realized I look exactly like a PE coach. And so literally in my like hoodie and sweatpants, like I just walked past every single layer of security and nobody stopped me because they just assumed I was a gym coach. Matt, I want to ask you, we got an email from Sarah. This is about you. It's very personal, by the way. How much did Matt's parents bribe the women's handball coach at UW to get him into school there? So with this huge college, we didn't get a chance. We weren't around last week to talk about the college bribery scandal. Were you associated with some sort of sports team that got you in on a bribe to UW?
No.
Can you imagine? I know what my parents would react. Can you imagine someone asking your parents, like, bribe money to get you into school?
Only at USC or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't. I mean, everyone that was acting surprised. It's like USC, they currently, well, last year anyway, they have an Indian guy on their basketball team who's never played, and he does not look like an athlete.
Oh, yeah, that dude. Yeah,
and the claim is that he started $1 million business from his dorm room. I'd like to see how many millions of dollars his parents have before I believe that. But the school is real shady. Like they had Master P's son on the basketball team, who just didn't really play basketball outside of anymore.
Like Snoop's done got to UCLA to play football. Never played.
This is all shady shit that's been going on for a while.
Although I think, in the defense, like, so you saw the tweet from Dr. Dre this past week where he said he was proud of his daughter for getting into USC the right way, although he had donated $70 million 5 years ago to the school.
What a moron.
But in some sense, that is the right way to bribe your way in.
Yeah.
Which is like, I don't have a problem with a rich guy, whether it be an old white guy or a rapper who's got tons of money or Jay-Z, donating to build a new school within a college, and then his kid gets to get in because that's how you get big fucking donations, That's sort of why we have libraries and museums and hospitals and stuff, because rich guys want their name on shit.
I don't like it. It's just a legal bribe. But
it is a legal bribe. But didn't you find the worst part about this case was how much money they were paying to get their kid? Like the Lori Laughlin's paid $250,000 a pop to get her kids into USC. Like, are you fucking? I mean, at least Felicity Huffman, she paid $15,000 to have someone take the SATs for her idiot kid. I'm like, okay. Like, you're a millionaire, $15,000, like, I guess. Like, still illegal, still, like, immoral. But, like, at least you had, like, a finance head on your brain. You're like, okay, I'll pay $15,000 for this. Some people pay, like, $1.2 million, like, to get their kids into a college. I'm like, what? Like,
it's really bizarre.
No, it's like the amount of bribe money was, like, so immense that it was like, I mean, I remember, someone reminded me when I was in high school, there was this kid who had someone else take the SATs for him. He was a shady kid. He was always a nice guy, but always the jankiest kid in high school. Mm-hmm. And he paid some guy to, and when I say paid, I mean like $20 back then to take the SATs under his name so he could get a good score, so he could go to, get into a decent college. And I always thought, like, that's the shadiest thing I ever heard of, but yeah, $20. like, I mean, if you really want to go to whatever college, I think he went to the Berkeley or Santa Barbara, one of those UC schools. Like, yeah, okay. But like $250,000, $500,000, $1 million for something that clearly financially isn't worth that amount of money by far, by many multiples.
Well, in USC and Yale and those places are littered with, the moron sons of rich people anyway. Like, I don't know how deep this goes. I don't think they want to do much investigating because they're going to find that 30% of their student body is useless. like I happen to know a ton of people that went to USC, and some of them are like Mexican kids that worked really hard, and then the other half are fucking morons whose parents went to USC, and you can tell quite simply.
And donated. You got to donate.
Yeah, and they're
when they say
involved in the whole
when they
thing.
say legacy, it's a little misleading because it's legacy plus donations.
Right. So if you're in the medical program, like I know one guy who went to USC, and now he pilots robotic surgeon hands that do heart surgery, and that's like his thing. And then I know some other guy who's a cokehead, and he went to the business school.
He's a film producer.
And those are two very different things. If you're in the business school at USC, you're
Yes.
a retard,
Yes.
son of someone.
Yes.
And if you're into the sciences, you're probably really smart. But there's a huge chasm between these majors.
Well, I don't have a problem with legal bribes because at least they are public knowledge. So if Dre wants to give $70 million to school and then expects his kids to get into school there, there's only so much you can do to stop people with tons of money from getting privileges.
Right.
The whole idea that like everyone's like outraged that like this is rich person privilege. Like, yeah, rich people have had privilege since we had money, invented money 10,000 years ago. It's not like this is not a new thing. Like rich people get privilege in everything. It's not just college admissions. They have to have nicer cars and better parking spots and live in nicer houses, and they get better treatment by the police. They get better private security, and they can get gun permits from the county sheriff that's for celebrities. Like, this is not like the first thing people are like outraged to learn. But I was really just surprised how much money people were willing to pay to get their kids into these schools, knowing that it was a pure pedigree thing. Like there was no way that money would ever be considered a wise investment financially.
And imagine if you're Felicity Huffman and your daughter, or is that William H. Macy's kid, the influencer one? So your daughter aspires to be an Instagram person, and you're like, fuck. So, your kid's kind of like not that great to begin with. And then she's going to USC where, whether she knew it or not, you're at least paying the tuition, which is very steep.
Like $50,000 a year.
And she's saying, I don't even want to go to college.
Oh, Lori Loughlin's daughter, yeah. Olivia Jade.
That's who I was thinking of.
Yeah, she literally got paid by Amazon to set up her dorm room her first day. Like, Amazon paid her money to say she was using Amazon to set up her dorm room.
Jesus.
All of this harkens back to the idiocy of the consumer audience for this stuff. But yeah, it's like it doesn't make like why of all things would you care if your idiot kid got into a semi-meaningful college where they didn't care about the education, and by the way, they didn't need the degree for their future, and they don't even want to be there, and now you're going to pay $500,000 to get them.
And now they're telling you don't want to be there. I'd be like, all right, bitch, then you're not going.
Yes.
Or you need to shut the fuck up and not say that anymore because, that's not a small sum of money no matter who you are. But
no.
Obviously, it's a huge ego on the part of these parents. The kids don't even care. And they're like, look at my kid. He got into USC. And it's very pathetic. It's definitely an L.A. type thing.
L.A., San Francisco, New York is where it's been. And also, actually, the best story I've read so far is the girl who got into – she was some banker's kid or something like that. But they got her into UCLA. The women's soccer coach is a guy, but the women's soccer coach at UCLA was on the take because there had to be a coach at every school on the take. And he brought her into the school under a fake soccer. I think she played AYSO for like 1 year. And UCLA has got one of the nationally ranked best women's soccer teams in the country. So they recruit like the best girls soccer players in the country.
Right.
And they put together like a national championship caliber team. And they had to brought this girl in. But unlike at USC and other schools where they just let the kids go, I decide I'm not going to play once I'm here. The rule is you had to play. And so she was actually on the team for freshman year. Literally this stumbling, bumbling, clumsy girl with like world-class soccer players who must have been so obvious as like just like circling around her and like seeing her that she was not the least bit equipped to be on the team. Like
not
incredibly
fair,
obvious.
Not fair to the kid. And I wonder how deep, I was thinking about this. How deep does this whole admissions thing go? Because I the other day was searching. This has happened to me 3 or 4 times. I was searching on the internet for a person that I know. And, let's say they're not a public figure. One of the first things that often comes up is if you played a high school sport.
Yeah.
It'll say, you were on the girls' soccer team in this year. And if you're good enough to get a Division I scholarship, I mean, who's
Who's not researching? Who's not Googling?
There's like a huge number of people that should have kind of caught this. I mean, like dozens and dozens of people.
Well, there was a woman, the college counselor at the Buckley School, the very prestigious prep school in the air in L.A., got a call from USC about one of their students saying that they were congratulating them that one of their seniors got into USC on a water polo entrance scholarship. And the guidance counselor at Buckley said, well, that's weird. We don't even have a water polo team here. And then the person, this is a woman who was on the take at USC, went back to like the singer guy and said, we got a problem. They don't even have a water polo team at the high school. And so then they give her a script to read. She calls the guidance counselor back and says, oh, yeah, this guy was on an international traveling team that travels like on vacations in the summer. Excellent player. We're excited to have him at USC. We can't wait. And then the guidance counselor goes further and says, like, isn't he really small? This kid's like tiny. And she's like, yeah, but he's incredibly strong for his size. Like literally just making the lie. And just people go like, okay, I guess, it's true. Like you're right. A simple Google would have solved a simple Google search.
Who's not doing this? Is these entire schools are just full of lazy, corrupt assholes.
I think
even in the student body, but especially in the administration.
But I'm not. We talk about the amount of money. I'm like, it's not like these guys, like the USC water polo coach got $1.2 million. It wasn't like someone came and said, like, here, I'll give you courtside Lakers tickets for a game, or I'll give you like, here's $500, I'm spending money. You get $1.2 million. I mean, who is not going to take a bribe, a $1 million bribe, to look the other way on shit or to sign some rich kid into their school? The amount of money is just so overwhelming that it just, it must not have been very hard to find people to take that amount of money. So especially coaches in obscure lesser sports.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, if there is something we can learn from this is that these sports don't need to exist. We don't need a women's water polo team or a men's for that matter. If you can get someone on the roster that they've never played the sport and like that doesn't fuck up your program at all.
And nobody notices.
And no one notices time after time, like, okay, you're no longer a sport.
I agree. They certainly should not have separate entrance admissions for athletes outside of football and baseball and basketball players, perhaps.
Yeah, imagine if USC football signed like, a bunch of skinny Jewish kids all of a sudden. Everyone would know something was up.
Yes.
Because that's a legitimate sport.
Even when they gave the scholarship to the blind long snapper, they had to do a full expose on it, showing that he actually knew how to snap. Like he actually spent 5 years learning how to snap. They couldn't just say like, we did a charity case admission. Right. They had to show that he actually was a functional long snapper and how good he was with his aim and stuff like that. Because you have all those, athlete review analysis sites and recruitment sites that look at all the recruits in the college classes. You couldn't skip by as a fake recruit in football or basketball.
No, could you even? But if you finish second in state in the 100 meters, which would be good enough to get you into UCLA. I don't know anything below that would. That's going to show up too.
Correct.
All this stuff is going to show up. Like if you lettered, especially at these shitty rich schools where these kids go, where they have a lot of online stuff that they use to promote their schools. That of course that would be really easy to prove or disprove.
I don't want my kids to go to college anymore. Like it used to be like,
when the photo of her on the rowing team is on a rowing machine,
yes.
That would be another clue that she's not really an athlete.
With the Photoshop face and she's got a Caucasian face and a black body. It didn't make any sense. Matt, I want to ask you about something you wrote this week about the NBA draft. I am big into basketball now because my Warriors are on their way to a 4th or 5th title, whatever it is. I stopped counting after a while. But you have this idea somehow in your mind that the small market NBA teams are being gypped by the big market, are being suckered by the big market teams they can never compete with, big medium market teams. So you want to rig the NBA draft such that the smaller market teams, Sacramento, Charlotte, or Orlando, all those places, every year have a better chance of getting the players in the draft.
Yeah, because the small market teams, so they put in this thing about the max salary, and basically it's supposed to encourage a team, so say a small market team, to keep their best player, say Anthony Davis. So now what the players are doing, which maybe in like past years would be seen as sort of going against your word, They're simply signing the big contract that they can only sign with their current team, and then demanding to be traded to a team that they want to go to, which is always going to be the Lakers, Miami, or maybe New Jersey or whatever. But it's only going to be 3 or 4 teams, right? So that's not fair to the small market teams. So I just say when you do the draft lottery, it's all ping pong balls. Just weight it more heavily to the small market teams and the big.
Well, it's weighted now towards the teams that finish towards the bottom, right?
Yeah. So do both. Weight it in terms of the record, like it is now, and they actually made it harder just now. They discourage tanking because the bottom 3 teams have an equal chance.
Interchangeable.
Then it up the ladder.
Which is important because you don't want the teams last few weeks of the season just trying to lose.
Right. I like that part. But I'm just saying, so keep that system. But then in addition, just give the small market teams an extra couple balls.
But here's what I don't understand.
Based on market,
this is some theory you have because you come from Alaska and maybe you're a fan of, like, I don't know, small teams in the Midwest. Is that like some of the best NBA franchises right now are not in major markets, and some of the worst major media markets, and some of the worst teams like LA Lakers and New York Knicks, both of whom are missing the playoffs for the umpteenth year in a row, 6 years in a row for the Lakers. They can't make the playoffs, which in basketball means a 500 record.
Right.
Are obviously the biggest, most valuable media markets in the country, whereas Milwaukee's got the best record in basketball this year. The Warriors are competing in the West with Denver tied for the best record. So I don't see that the actual yes, the teams are worth a lot more. It's somehow Dolan has valued the Knicks at $4 billion, despite the fact they're a fucked up franchise. And it's based largely on the associated properties owned by Madison Square Garden, but also just the television contract, the worth of the television contracts. Now, the Dodgers did the same thing when they sold. They have the huge Time Warner TV contract, which made them the most valuable baseball franchise, along with the Yankees. But those teams aren't doing better. I think there's no indication that a smaller medium market team can't get, in basketball you need 2 or 3 really good players to win. Can't get those players and sort of dominate.
No, they can, but it's just less common. So with Milwaukee, they drafted Antetokounmpo like 12th or 13th or something, and he ends up being the best player in the league. So they got lucky, but they wouldn't have to do much to just be stranded in no man's land like the Detroit Pistons are. They've just been mediocre forever and ever because they're going to lose a lot of free agents, and no one is ever going to elect to come to Detroit. Like when LeBron was...
Well, he was in Cleveland, which is a shitty... just Detroit a little bit south, right?
Yeah, but he's from there. He was drafted by them.
But, I mean, he could have... They were one player away from winning many titles there.
Yeah, but you just have... It's like being a kid that grew up in the ghetto here in L.A. and making it to USC. You can do it. You just have to work really hard and overachieve. Whereas the Lakers and the Knicks are, sort of working really hard to suck, it seems like. Or at least they're severely incompetent.
There's a salary cap, right? So the contract structure is put in place for each team. So you don't get more money by maxing out with the Lakers than you would maxing out with the Sacramento Kings, right?
No, but you'd get more if you were with your current team.
Right, but so if you came from those teams, so I think it seems to me like
no one would ever choose to go to Detroit over Los Angeles.
Because of what? Because of what?
Living in Detroit versus Los Angeles.
Although, what's his name? Bryce Harper just in baseball turned down the California teams because of the income tax in California. So he's saving himself like $35 million by going to Philadelphia. So I think there's other things at play there. But I don't see that in the NBA so much. I don't know. I think the NBA to me seems like a place where if you have a good owner, no matter what market you're in, because there's so much money in the NBA and everyone can easily afford the top max payrolls, that you could build a super team in any small market you want to. San Antonio's been one of the better teams for the last 15 years.
Yeah, Oklahoma City's
okay, is certainly competitive.
But these are all, really well run. They're all overachieving organizations. Like if you looked at a map that showed income of the United States, that showed the various county and city income, and then the teams that usually suck, like just in terms of the record of the teams from wealthy areas versus poor areas, you would see a correlation in wins versus losses too. Like Detroit, Milwaukee is good this year, but they've been mostly shitty for decades.
Well, it used to be L.A. and New York. L.A. and New York used to have dominant teams, and Boston and a couple other major market franchises used to. But I'm not sure if that's just the case anymore. I think that this feels like something you should have instituted 20 years ago, Matt, as opposed to now. I'm not sure this is solving. This could have solved the problem of like the Showtime Lakers or the Kobe and Shaq Lakers.
I'm just thinking of, so Anthony Davis signed this huge contract with the Pelicans, and now he's going to leave that team who's paying him. And he basically didn't play the last half of the season after he said, I don't want to play for you guys. So he's going to leave, and they're just going to suck now forever.
Yeah, probably.
And that's not right.
Although they haven't done all that well with him on the team. I mean, they haven't got past the first round of the playoffs. So I can see why. If he wants to go win. I mean, he wants to win a title. I get that. That's why Durant left Oklahoma City and went to the Warriors, because he could get titles there, and he wasn't going to get them in Oklahoma City. Although Oklahoma City, to their discredit, traded away Harden and some other guys. If they had kept the original players with Durant, they would have probably won 3 or 4 titles in a row.
But that's my point, though, is so Davis signs with LeBron's agency.
Yes.
How come he wants to go to L.A., though? If it's all about winning, would you want to go to L.A.? Would you demand going to Boston or Philadelphia? I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but no, it's because he wants to live in L.A. Like, the basketball part has something to do with it, but that's what I'm saying. Like, no one's ever pulled that move and been like, send me to Boston.
No, well, LeBron's got like 3 TV shows on television right now.
Right.
They all seem to involve people chasing each other. I don't really understand any of it. There's always like, it all involves like blacktop recess games that are now like some large-scale Universal Studios. But you're right. They want to be in LA because they all want to make movies or TV, or they want to be in New York because that's where all the hot chicks are, and that's where they can live really nicely. I don't blame them for that. But again, those teams aren't doing very well. So I think your solution is solving a problem that doesn't necessarily exist right now, and it will just piss off. What happens when the NBA as a whole makes money as a whole from their contracts? When they have the best players in smaller media markets, they make less money.
Right.
So when they have LeBron in LA, they make a lot of, even though the Lakers didn't do well, I'm sure they would wish they would have made the playoffs. They make a lot more money. They make a lot more money having LeBron in LA than they do in Cleveland. The NBA does. So there is a reason why they want their bigger players in the bigger markets.
Yeah.
So
but I just don't think it's good for parity. I'm assuming that they just want every franchise to thrive to some degree.
I don't want parity. The Warriors are dominant. waited 40 years of sucky teams, and now they've won. Now they're the most dominant franchise, and they're about to lose a lot of their players. This is like their last year or so. So don't take that away from me, Matt. Matt, I want to end on another. This is the day of your heroes. Michael Avenatti. Here's what I understand about Avenatti. He got arrested in some very, very, even more serious charges than I think most people would have imagined. He got federally indicted in 2 separate states, which was not a good sign for him. One was in New York for extorting Nike, basically threatening to shake down Nike unless they gave him a $20 million contract. He was going to expose all the dirt he knew about how they illegally pay college players. Like, what? Like, I think that's every Sports Illustrated expose of the last 20 years. I think, what? You're going to refer, if you don't give me $20 million, I'm going to give people the URL link to the last, like, ESPN expose on Rick Pitino. I mean, like, what was he really revealing there? I guess he had some hard evidence, but like, we're going to show that Nike pays agents who pay players in college money.
So are you not allowed to kind of blackmail companies like that?
No, you're not allowed to.
Blackmail is kind of the wrong word, though.
Well, give me a big fat contract to be your whatever rep, or I'm going to turn this information over to the police.
That's illegal?
Yes. It's extortion.
I thought that's how you just negotiate.
Well, you do unless the other party tapes you doing it, and then they turn it over to the feds. And they're also Nike, who has a little bit of influence in New York and other places. So, I mean, I assume that's how most business gets done in New York. But if Nike decides that you're fucking with them too much, they just turn the tapes over and go to the friend who they give season tickets.
Plus, they're probably already annoyed at your face based on the constant TV appearances. So it's like, this fucking guy, you know what? No, let's just.
And by the way, along with Mark Garagos, at the same time, doing the same extortion.
Is that the same thing that Garagos is being?
Yes, he's being indicted on co-conspiracy for the Nike thing as well. And then in L.A., Avenatti was just ripping off his clients. He was taking their settlement money and basically giving it to himself and funneling it through his different shell corporations, and basically telling people their money wasn't coming for a year in settlements and spending the money on He had, of course, all the things you'd expect, like a racing team, multiple mansions.
Really?
Yeah, like we own the Tully's coffee franchises that he was completely ripping off of any cash they earned into put into his other businesses, and he just had like $150,000 debt at Brooks Brothers clothing.
So he's going to go to jail.
He's definitely. I mean, he claims he's innocent, but here's what I don't really understand. This is like with Smollett. I picked up on Avenatti, I'd say within, 30 seconds, that he was first of all, how do we know him? What do we know about him? He's representing a porn star, and he's suing the president because the porn star wants to be able to tell people that she fucked the president so she can get a book deal. That's what we know. That's his foundation story, right? That's what we know about him. Like nothing else. And then he looks like a hyper-aggressive bald dude. He represents porn stars, okay? So what do you think about him right away? You at least, in the very least, you got to be very suspicious of an attorney who's chosen to build their expertise in the area of porn star representation.
Yeah,
and on top of that, being an ambulance chaser who's taking a fee for the lawsuit.
Like how many lawyers did she contact before she settled on him?
Or she just talked to her porn star friends and they gave him her. He's like a guy who's got the card on the wall at the porn house, right?
Right.
So how did he go from that to like being a guy? I saw the montages online like last summer where multiple people were saying like, this guy should run for president. This is guy. If you're looking at who's hot in the Democratic Party right now, this is the guy we want. This is the guy we want the ticket, without even thinking for a moment that this guy must be up to some. It's like having Lucky Luciano, some like mobster that is involved in a crime syndicate, saying he should be the mayor, and not expecting that all these stories about all his grift and crime is going to come out. I don't understand how people could be that stupid.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it was. Did women find him attractive? What was the thing?
Well, I think his thing was, again, I mean, this whole thing with Trump is now there's Trump, who's an idiot, and there's all these people who've made their bones by being crazy, getting, if they can bait Trump into, going after them, they become a hero, like instantly become a hero.
Right.
That's why Stormy Daniels was considered like seriously as like literally had people defending her reputation online. And Avenatti talking about how he's like, a spokesperson for justice was because Trump called him an asshole, and he called Trump an asshole and said, I'm going to take you down. And there was a time when people were saying he was going to be the guy who took Trump down.
Right.
With the Stormy Daniels sex payment, which
he kind of piggybacked on her kind of weird feminist cause. And then even though he was just her lawyer, all of a sudden he became like a spokesperson almost.
Yeah.
And then he like beat his wife like a week later.
I don't know. Like it was just the whole Tully's Coffee thing was out there. I did have Tully's Coffee up in Alaska. I don't know, but it was like in San Francisco, other places. It was like a lesser version of Pete's, but he got it somehow. Like I literally think he won in a poker game or something, but he was like, they kept closing. They were like the balance sheets or whatever matching up and stuff like that. He was clearly like pulling money out of that business for other businesses. He was just, he had like sleazeball written all over him. And it's just like, we live in a culture now where people like, guess it's for partisan political reasons on both sides, will just accept the fact that these blatantly, obviously horrible people deserve like public recognition or praise, or like should run for president. I mean, just the fact that Trump in the first place should run for president and became president. We live in this very horrible time, I think, when like our idols are just these absolutely empty morons that, like, if you did, like you said with the college kids, if you did one Google search, you would know these are really, really bad people. And like people either are too lazy to fucking do that, even press people, or they just don't want to believe it because they're so amped up by what this person represents.
Yeah, exactly what they represent. And it's such a shitty celebrity culture that it's like someone's either got to be the Lord's savior or like a total racist, homophobic piece of shit, right? Like it's really like this person's either great or terrible. There's no more like, yeah, that guy's pretty good. He's got some good ideas. Wouldn't trust him around your kids, that type of thing.
Or he's just a smart guy, or he has good insight, or like even poor Neil deGrasse, they took out with a sexual harassment charge. Like you finally get like a one decent guy who's like smart and like says shit like plainly, and they take him out. He gets taken out of the sexual harassment charge. It's like literally, if you look at like the 100 most recognizable or famous people in this country, they're all basically shady idiots. It's really like there's no one people look up to that actually deserves being looked up to anymore. It's really kind of sad, and it's getting worse and worse and worse as the idiots are getting bigger followings on social media.
And that's almost part of that Cardi B thing of like, just get ahead no matter what. It's like, hey, I did what I had to do. Like I wanted a new piece of jewelry, so yeah, I just drugged and stole from people.
Yeah,
it's like,
and people consider it very real and like it's woke and like. That's some like amazing backstory.
Yeah,
it's like the rich. It always reminds me of like the 6 degrees of separation, or like the rich white people getting around and finding like the indigent black person and being just enamored of everything the person does, because it's such a like they feel so profoundly liberal that they want to believe that like an indigent person is so filled with virtue, whereas everyone else knows that people on the streets are just not that virtuous.
Yeah,
strippers, hookers, drug dealers, pimps, just not the height of like moral insights or some sort of life on the street common sense knowledge you want to pass on to anybody else in this generation.
No, just people that like will punch you in the face,
yes,
and not feel bad about it,
or drug your drink and take your watch and steal your money, and then become a rapper of some. I honestly I don't understand that music. I mean, I appreciate good rap. I do not understand that music at all, other than the fact that like it's a completely personality driven music. Where like if anybody else put that same music out, nobody would give a shit about it. The end of our show for this week. You have something you wish to pimp and promote?
Not really. Instagram, the Matt Ralston. Twitter, Matthew Ralston.
Have you heard back from Rain Dove on your various accusations of her indecent proposals?
Yeah, I talked to her on Instagram chat. She was spinning a bunch of false yarns, doing damage control, recon, just throwing out a lot of misinformation and claiming she's not a liar, even though it's really obvious that she is, and everyone knows it. And she took down her Facebook page.
Do you think you're gonna damage her pop-up exhibitionist art shows around town? Could be damaging her livelihood of weird unknown name school sponsored art exhibits featuring Rain Dove.
I mean, I'd be happy to do that. Sure.
College of West Los Angeles gender studies art pop-up shows. Featuring clothing in which he suffered as a woman dressed like a man. Well, I wish you the best of luck with her. I liked when you were taking on the fat chick in Minnesota. That was my favorite. The lady who ate all the fried chicken. you really picked some taking down the top. You're really like a David versus Goliath type person.
Right.
You've really sought out the speaking truth to power. Find the really powerful people in our society.
Yeah, find some annoying liar model.
Yeah, you actually break into the back of like a sideshow at a circus, like just berating like the woman with the beard and like the midget and stuff like that. Horrible things. All right, this is Lex, Last Murder. Talk to you next week.
There's a rub and tug in our neighborhood. They promise you'll leave feeling good. You got a problem, need some tending. They guarantee a happy ending at the rub and tug in our neighborhood. All the boys leave feeling good. All the boys leave feeling good. Give them some money, they'll relax you a little bit more. They give you some extras at the rub and tug in our neighborhood. All the boys leave feeling good. All the boys leave